for declined. I call on Government Order of the Day.
Adjourn debate on the Prime Minister's statement.
Jami-Lee Ross.
Mr Speaker, what a great time it is to be a member of the National Party caucus. It's a great time to be a member of this caucus because as we head into election year later this year, we've got a leader that's charismatic, we've got a leader that's effective, we've got a leader that's on top of his job. And, Mr Speaker, we've also got a leader that's one of the most popular Prime Ministers we've ever seen in the last 50 years at this stage in the electoral cycle. And, Mr Speaker, the party opposite is jealous. The party opposite is jealous because their leader is tricky. Their leader makes things up on the hoof. Their leader does not have caucus support either. Every single person sitting behind him is questioning right now whether their party made the right decision. And, Mr Speaker, we like to say on this side of the House that their best start policy was actually a bad start to the year. But I want to take a different spin on that. I want to take a different spin and say it wasn't just the worst start to the year for them. Actually, it was a bit of a best start. But it was a best start for the ABC Club. It was the best start for the Anyone But Cunliffe Club. It was the best start for those people who know their leader's not up to it, who know their leader is not fit to be the Prime Minister of New Zealand. And, Mr Speaker, New Zealanders around the country know that as well. Mr Speaker, New Zealand as a country is doing exceptionally well right now. We're doing exceptionally well because New Zealanders are seeing significant growth rates. We're one of the best countries in the OECD at the moment when it comes to growth. Mr Speaker, 66,000 jobs in the New Zealand economy were created last year for New Zealanders. And when you think about what's happening overseas, when you think about our neighbours in Australia, when you think about the difficult global financial crisis that many countries have gone through, seeing the 66,000 new jobs in the economy created for New Zealanders is a huge achievement. And Andrew Little over there likes to yell and scream, but he's a former union leader, and he knows that many of the policies that his group, his party, his former clan and the unions want to pursue will actually lead to less jobs for New Zealanders. Mr Speaker, we have the policies that are seeing more jobs for New Zealanders. They don't like to hear it, but it's absolutely the truth. Mr Speaker, in this country, business confidence is at 20-year highs. Mr Speaker, New Zealand businesses are feeling the positive effects in the economy. They're wanting to invest more money, and that investment is leading to more jobs. And, Mr Speaker, I think one of the proudest achievements of this government so far has been in the welfare area, where 17,000 Kiwis came off the benefit in the last year and moved into work, training or other forms of education. 17,000 people now have a new start to life. 17,000 people are no longer trapped in the welfare trap. We know that the opposition likes to see them stay there because it actually, for the opposition, seems to benefit them. But in the long term, the best thing for people on welfare to do is to get into jobs, get into training, get into education, because that's the key to success. And despite the squawking on the other side about manufacturing in the last year, manufacturing is growing in this country too, and New Zealanders are really seeing the impacts of that. Exports, says Mr. What's your name? Mr. Parker. Exports, says Mr. Parker. Exports are growing hugely. My colleagues on this side of the House can see exports growing in this country too. New Zealanders can see it as well. And when it comes to real after-tax wages, despite what they want to say, after-tax wages are up 25% since we've been in office, despite the inflation rate being at about 10%. Mr Speaker, I just want to turn a little bit to Australia, because we know our Prime Minister was in Australia recently. We know that the opposition thinks that nothing came of it. Well, actually, Mr Speaker, the relationship between New Zealand and Australia has considerably strengthened in the last few years. So much so that Australia is looking to this country for ideas as to how to improve their economy. Tony Abbott, the Prime Minister in Australia, gave a recent speech to the Trans-Tasman Business Circle, He said, when I look at New Zealand, I see a country which at this point in its history has much to teach us. He talked about the fact that the key government has seen the growth in government slow. The other side likes to see government continue to grow and grow. This side actually believes people should be empowered, not so much seeing government growth. In this country, government percentage of the economy, of the GDP, has reduced from 35% to 30%. And I think the best quote that I could take from Tony Abbott's speech was this: as government gets smaller, citizens get bigger. And that is what this government wants to achieve in this country: empowered citizens. That's exactly what the National Party is pursuing: empowered citizens, a stronger economy, lower crime rates, more people getting into health and education. New Zealand is succeeding around the country. But, Mr. Speaker, Tony Abbott also knows a bit about watching a Green Party in government, because in Australia they had the Green Party participating considerably in the last Labor-Greens government. And when we go to the polls later this year, we know New Zealanders have two options on their hands. They've got the strong, stable national government, which is succeeding for New Zealanders, or they've got the alternative Labor, Green, Mana, Winston government, which would be an absolute disaster for New Zealand. Mr. Speaker, we know that the Greens are bad for economies, because Australia is facing exactly the same type of problems that this country was left in 2008. Australia's seeing massive growth in debt on their books. They're seeing huge amounts of unemployment facing them in the face. They're seeing growth rates in their economy considerably on the down low as well. And, Mr. Speaker, those are the issues that we had to face in this country, and we know that if Labor and the Greens got back into office, that's exactly what we'd face as well. But, Mr. Speaker, there's another strand to the story about the Green Party that I think we have to explore in this House, because as much as the Green Party likes to talk about dodgy deals when they look at us, I think the last 24 hours has shown us that there's one dodgy deal in this country which is brewing, which absolutely needs public scrutiny and public examination. Mr. Speaker, we know that Russell Norman has recently been visiting onekim.com. Mr. Speaker, we also know that one Russell Norman has said publicly to TV3 and other media outlets that he is willing to intervene in any extradition process for Mr. .com. We also know that Mr. Norman has said on record that he has asked Mr. .com to pull back from his political interventions through his Internet Party, knowing that the Internet Party would likely take some votes from the Green Party. If there's any dodgy deal in this country whereby politicians are considering intervening in judicial processes, where politicians are considering intervening in whether or not this government extradites an individual to the United States, and asking at the same time that that individual doesn't do anything to help them, to hurt them politically, if there's any party in this country which is entertaining dodgy deals, then it's the Green Party and it's Russell Norman. And as much as they like to squawk and point fingers at this side of the House and complain about the quite legitimate electoral deals that this party sends to the people, there is one party in this country which is corrupting the political process, and it's the Green Party, and they should be ashamed of that. Mr. Speaker, they also used to be against big money in politics. They also used to be against business people getting involved in the political process. But actually, the Green Party is being completely the ones who are doing an about-face and changing their style completely. Mr. Speaker, I'm appalled by what I've seen when it comes to the extradition process and the Green Party, and New Zealanders should be appalled by it as well. Mr. Speaker, we've got a strong story to tell in this country. We know that the economy is growing. We know that New Zealanders are starting to feel the positive impacts of economic growth. They're seeing more jobs, less people in unemployment, less people on the welfare queue, more people getting operations. We're seeing that we're going to get back to surplus next year. We're also going to see this country start to grow even more and continue to be a bright, shining star in the world economy. Mr. Speaker, the contrast on the other side is not flash. We know that the policies that they're coming up with are made on the hoof. The policies don't stack up. We know the numbers don't stack up either. Mr. Speaker, the Labor Party is tricky. Mr. Speaker, the Green Party is dodgy. Mr. Speaker, this government has the recipe to see New Zealand continue to grow, and that's what we'll be putting to the people later this year.
Honourable Shane Jones.